The carriage lurched through the iron gates of Brier Keep just after dawn, carrying a woman who had learned that hope was a dangerous currency. Beatrice Hensley pressed her palm against the frost-bitten window, watching the ancient estate rise from the mist like a monument to sorrow. They told her she'd been hired to civilize the Duke's impossible heir. They forgot to mention the Duke himself was the one who needed saving. The great doors opened, and a man emerged from the shadows. Tall, devastatingly composed, with eyes that held the kind of grief that doesn't ask permission. Edmund Blackridge, Duke of Brier, looked at her the way a drowning man looks at a storm, with recognition, with terror, with the faintest, most dangerous flicker of hope. Beatrice's breath caught, because in that single moment, she understood the truth no advertisement could have prepared her for. This house was breaking. Its children were breaking. And the man who ruled it was shattering so quietly that no one dared to notice. Beatrice squared her shoulders. She had survived worse than heartbreak. But as she stepped into Brier Keep, she couldn't shake the feeling she was walking into a story that would either remake her or ruin her completely. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. Beatrice Hensley had always understood the mathematics of survival. Born the second daughter of a country solicitor in Hampshire, she'd been raised on practical wisdom, modest comforts, and the bone-deep knowledge that women like her, neither wealthy enough for leisure nor poor enough for pity, had exactly two paths: marriage to whoever would have them, or work. She chose work. At 26, she was considered past marriageable age by society's unforgiving clock, though her steady gray eyes and the determined line of her mouth suggested a woman who had stopped apologizing for her existence. She had spent the past 7 years as a governess in respectable households, teaching spoiled daughters their French conjugations and watercolor washes, maintaining the invisible wall between servant and family, belonging nowhere. It was honest work, lonely work, but it was hers. When her last position ended, the family relocating to India without need of her services, Beatrice found herself adrift once more, scanning the Morning Post for her next placement. The advertisement for Brier Keep had been unusual. Governess required for 2 boys, ages 7 and 10. Must possess exceptional patience, firm resolve, and unshakable nerves. Previous governesses discouraged from applying. Generous terms. Inquire Mrs. Pemberton, housekeeper, Brier Keep, Northumberland. The warning should have deterred her. The salary, nearly triple her previous wage, made her brave. The journey to Northumberland took 3 days by coach, and with each mile the world grew wilder. The cultivated fields of the south gave way to windswept moorland, the villages grew smaller, the sky heavier. By the time Beatrice reached the village of Brierwell on the moor, autumn had stripped the trees bare, and the air carried the metallic taste of coming snow. The innkeeper's wife crossed herself when Beatrice mentioned her destination. Brier Keep, miss? You're certain? Quite certain. I'm the new governess. The woman's weathered face creased with something between pity and warning. They've had 6 and 18 months, miss. Not a one lasted more than a fortnight. Those boys. She lowered her voice. They say the house itself is cursed. Ever since the Duchess died. I don't believe in curses, Beatrice said, though her hands trembled slightly as she lifted her teacup. Then perhaps you'll be the one to break it. The woman's words followed Beatrice like a cold wind as the hired coach carried her up the winding road to the estate. When Brier Keep finally emerged from the mist, Beatrice's breath caught despite herself. It was magnificent, Gothic, forbidding, a fortress built not to keep invaders out, but to keep sorrow in. The entrance hall was exactly as imposing as Beatrice had imagined. Vaulted ceilings, dark paneling, portraits of severe ancestors judging from every wall. But what struck her most was the silence. Not peaceful silence, but the oppressive quiet of a house holding its breath. Mrs. Pemberton, the housekeeper, was a woman of perhaps 55, with iron-gray hair and eyes that assessed Beatrice with the precision of a battlefield general. "You're younger than I expected," she said without preamble. "And smaller. The boys are formidable." I've managed formidable children before, Mrs. Pemberton. Not like these, I'll wager. The housekeeper's expression softened fractionally. But you've got steady eyes. That may count for something. She led Beatrice through corridors that felt too large, too empty, past closed doors and covered furniture. The east wing, where Beatrice's modest room overlooked the wild gardens, felt like an exile. His Grace is away on estate business, Mrs. Pemberton explained. But he'll return this evening. He'll want to meet you at dinner. A pause. The boys are in the nursery. Perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself? Before Beatrice could respond, a crash echoed from somewhere above, followed by shouting. Perhaps now would be ideal, Beatrice said dryly. She found them in what had once been a drawing room, now transformed into a battlefield. Jameson Blackridge, the heir, age 10, stood atop an overturned settee wearing a tattered cape, brandishing a wooden sword like a conqueror. Dark-haired, sharp-featured, with his father's commanding presence already evident in his small frame. Bram, age 7, was attempting to construct a fortress from stolen cushions, his copper curls wild, his hands covered in what appeared to be jam. Between them, a shattered vase. Torn draperies. A footman tied to a chair with a curtain cord, looking mortified. We're marauders, Jameson announced, spotting Beatrice. And you're our prisoner. Beatrice took in the scene with remarkable calm. The destruction, the defiance, the underneath it all desperation in their eyes. Children testing boundaries that had dissolved, searching for someone who would stay. Marauders, she said thoughtfully, stepping into the chaos. How interesting. I was once captured by marauders myself. This gave them pause. You were not, Jameson challenged. I most certainly was. In the Scottish Highlands. Terrible business. They demanded my surrender. Bram's eyes widened. What did you do? I made them a bargain. Beatrice moved closer, her voice dropping. I told them I possessed something more valuable than gold, knowledge of how to build a fortress that would never fall. But I would only share it if they agreed to hear my terms first. What were your terms? Jameson had lowered his sword slightly. That we work together instead of against each other. Because the strongest fortresses aren't built by marauders, Master Jameson. They're built by builders. The room fell silent. Slowly, Jameson climbed down from his perch. Bram released the footman, who fled gratefully. Beatrice knelt beside the shattered vase, clearly expensive, clearly precious. This was your mother's, wasn't it? Bram's voice was small. She brought it from her childhood home. Then perhaps, Beatrice said gently, we might collect the pieces together and see if it can be mended. Some broken things, with patience and care, can be made whole again. She looked up to find both boys staring at her with unsettling intensity. Every governess before had scolded, punished, or fled. Beatrice was offering something different. Understanding. Will you really stay? Jameson asked, and beneath the bravado, she heard what he was truly asking. Will you leave us too? I intend to try, Beatrice answered honestly. If you'll have me. Dinner was a solitary affair in her room, Mrs. Pemberton explained that his Grace had been delayed and would see her the following morning instead. But that night, unable to sleep in the unfamiliar room, Beatrice wandered the darkened corridors of Brier Keep. That's when she heard it. A sound from the music room. Not music, but something raw and broken. She moved closer, drawn by instinct, and through the partially opened door she saw him for the first time. Edmund Blackridge. The Duke of Brier stood at the piano, his back to her, his shoulders rigid with tension. He wasn't playing, just pressing his fingers to the keys without sound, as if remembering a melody he could no longer bear to hear. Even in silhouette, he commanded the space. Tall, broad-shouldered, radiating a grief so profound it seemed to bend the air around him. Then he turned, and Beatrice forgot how to breathe. He was perhaps 35, devastatingly handsome in the way of men who've forgotten their own beauty. Dark hair, strong features, and eyes. God, his eyes, the color of a winter storm, holding such exhaustion and sorrow that Beatrice felt it like a blow to her chest. You're the new governess. His voice was low, rough with disuse. Miss Hensley, Your Grace. Mrs. Pemberton tells me you survived your first encounter with my sons. That alone makes you exceptional. Your sons aren't monsters, Your Grace. They're broken. The word was knife-sharp. Is that what you were going to say? Grieving, Beatrice corrected quietly. There's a difference. Something flickered in his expression, surprise, or perhaps anger, But before he could respond, Beatrice found herself speaking words she hadn't planned. I lost my mother when I was 8, Your Grace. The pain makes you want to break things, to see if the world will finally notice you're hurting. The Duke went very still. You presume to understand my children after one afternoon, Miss Hensley? I presume to understand grief, Your Grace. It's a language I learned young. He studied her for a long, unsettling moment, and Beatrice had the sense of being truly seen for the first time in years. Not assessed as a servant, not judged as a spinster, but recognized as a person who had survived her own storms. I expect discipline, Miss Hensley, he finally said. Structure. My sons will have proper lessons, proper behavior, proper childhoods, Beatrice suggested softly. With room to grieve, permission to feel. His jaw tightened. You're either very brave or very foolish, Miss Hensley. Perhaps both, Your Grace. For the space of a heartbeat, something almost like a smile ghosted across his features. Then he turned back to the piano, dismissing her without words. Beatrice retreated to her room, her heart pounding. She had been hired to tame 2 unruly boys. But standing in that music room, meeting the eyes of a man drowning so quietly no one noticed, Beatrice realized she'd walked into something far more dangerous. A house that had forgotten how to breathe. A father who had forgotten how to feel. And 2 children caught between grief and abandonment. She lay awake until dawn, watching shadows move across the ceiling, wondering if she possessed the strength to heal a family this broken, or if Brier Keep would break her first. Edmund Blackridge had perfected the art of watching without being seen. From the library window overlooking the east gardens, from the shadowed alcove near the schoolroom, from the gallery above the morning room, he observed the woman who had disrupted the careful architecture of his grief. Beatrice moved through Brier Keep like sunlight through a shuttered house, not forcing her way in but finding the cracks, the forgotten spaces, the places where life still wanted to grow. He watched her teach Jameson mathematics on the terrace, turning equations into stories about merchants and pirates until the boy's scowl transformed into reluctant fascination. He watched her sit with Bram in the overgrown garden, identifying insects with a naturalist's precision and a child's wonder. He watched her read to them by firelight, her voice steady and warm, creating a circle of safety his sons hadn't known since their mother died. And it terrified him, because every moment of her kindness was a mirror held up to his own failures. Every laugh she coaxed from his children was an indictment of the silence he had imposed. She made it look effortless, this business of loving broken things back to wholeness, and Edmund knew with crushing certainty that he had forgotten how. The day she found him in the portrait gallery, staring at Catherine's painted face, he felt stripped bare. Beatrice said nothing at first, just stood beside him in the dim light, her presence neither intrusive nor indifferent. She was beautiful, Beatrice finally said. Your sons have her smile. They've forgotten how to use it. His voice came out rougher than intended. Not forgotten, Your Grace. Just misplaced. Like a book shelved in the wrong section. Still there, waiting to be found. Edmund turned to look at her then, really look at her. This woman with her practical dress and steady eyes, who spoke of grief like someone who had mapped its geography. You're not afraid of me. Should I be? Most people are. The scarred, grieving Duke. They don't know what to do with me. Beatrice's gaze was unflinching. I see a father who's drowning quietly because he thinks drowning loudly would frighten his children. But they're already frightened, Your Grace. Not of your grief, but of your absence. Something cracked in Edmund's chest. He wanted to argue, to defend the walls he had built so carefully. But watching Beatrice walk away, her footsteps echoing in the empty gallery, he felt the first dangerous stirring of something he thought had died with Catherine. Hope. The storm came in the 3rd week, turning afternoon into premature night. Beatrice found Jameson alone in the schoolroom, staring out at the rain-lashed windows with a stillness that set off alarms in her chest. No lessons today? She asked gently. What's the point? His voice was flat, adult in its despair. Mother used to say education was important, that I'd be Duke someday and needed to be worthy of it. But she's gone, and Father doesn't care, and sometimes I think maybe it would have been better if I'd been in the accident instead of... Stop. Beatrice was across the room before conscious thought, kneeling before him. Jameson, look at me. The boy's eyes, so like his father's, were dry and ancient. I'm tired, Miss Hensley. Tired of pretending everything's fine. Tired of being good so father doesn't disappear even more. I'm just so tired. Beatrice pulled him into her arms, feeling the rigid way he held himself, afraid to break, afraid to bend. Then stop pretending. Stop being good. Just be tired, be angry, be whatever you need to be. I'm not leaving. The dam broke. Jameson sobbed against her shoulder with the force of 2 years' worth of unshed tears, and Beatrice held him, rocking slightly, murmuring wordless comfort. She found Bram later, hiding in the linen closet with his mother's shawl pressed to his face. He didn't speak when she discovered him, just looked at her with wounded eyes that expected judgment. Instead, Beatrice climbed into the closet beside him, settling in the cramped darkness. It still smells like her. A small nod. I used to keep my mother's handkerchiefs, lavender and rose water. I'd hold them when the missing got too heavy. Father said we should put her things away, that it's morbid to cling to the dead. Beatrice's jaw tightened. Your father is wrong. Remembering isn't morbid, Bram. It's love. You hold on to that shawl as long as you need to. They sat together in the darkness, and Beatrice understood what she was seeing. Not wildness, not disobedience. Just 2 children bearing bruises that never showed on skin. The bruise of a father's retreat. The bruise of being expected to heal faster than hearts could manage. The bruise of loving someone so much that their absence felt like amputation. That evening, she found Edmund in his study and closed the door behind her with deliberate firmness. Your Grace, we need to talk about your sons. They arrived on a Tuesday afternoon like birds of prey dressed in silk and false concern. Lady Victoria Blackmore swept through Brier Keep's entrance hall with the entitlement of someone who had once imagined herself its mistress, her widow's black somehow more fashionable than mourning. Behind her came Isolde Fenwick, all sharp cheekbones and sharper observations, and Josephine Wentworth, whose sweet smile never quite reached her calculating eyes. Beatrice was descending the stairs with the boys when the entourage arrived, and she felt the temperature drop as 3 pairs of aristocratic eyes assessed her with surgical precision. Her simple day dress, her lack of jewelry, her position half servant, half something else, all catalogued and found wanting. Edmund, darling. Victoria purred when the Duke emerged from his study, reaching for his hands with practiced intimacy. We've been desperately worried. You've become such a recluse. We simply had to check on you and these poor motherless boys. Jameson's hand tightened in Beatrice's, but she kept her expression neutral, guiding both children past the gathering with murmured excuses about lessons. Behind her, she heard Isolde's voice, pitched to Carrie. Is that the new governess? How quaint. She seems rather young, doesn't she? And I understand she dines with the family. How progressive. The word progressive landed like an accusation. That evening, Beatrice kept to her room during dinner, understanding without being told that her presence would complicate things. But sound carried in old houses, and through the floorboards she caught fragments of conversation that made her stomach clench. The entire county is talking, Edmund. A governess dining at your table, accompanying you on estate visits. People are beginning to wonder about your judgment. She's brought stability to my household, Victoria. That's all that matters. Is it? Because it looks like something else entirely. The boys are too attached. It's unseemly. And when she inevitably leaves, as they all do, those children will be devastated again. Josephine's honeyed voice joined in. We only want what's best for you, Your Grace. You need a proper companion, someone of appropriate station. The boys need a mother, not a hired caretaker playing at being family. Beatrice pressed her hands against the cool window pane, fighting the sick certainty that they were right. She was playing at something she had no right to claim. The boys' laughter at breakfast, Edmund's rare smiles, the way Bram had started calling her B when he forgot himself. All of it was borrowed, temporary, built on the unstable foundation of her employment. Mrs. Pemberton found her later, her weathered face troubled. Don't let them poison you, Miss Hensley. I've been in this house 30 years, and I've never seen those boys as happy as they've been these past weeks. They'll say I'm inappropriate, that I'm overstepping. They'll say anything to maintain their grip on His Grace. Lady Victoria's been circling like a vulture since the Duchess died, convinced she'll be the next to wear the coronet. The housekeeper's voice dropped. But he doesn't look at her the way he looks at you. Beatrice's breath caught. Mrs. Pemberton, that's the truth. And truth has a way of being inconvenient for people like them. After the women departed the next morning, their carriage rolling away with promises to return soon, Beatrice found evidence of their visit scattered like poisoned seeds. A maid's pitying glance. A footman's sudden formality. The way conversation stopped when she entered rooms. The whispers had begun, and whispers, Beatrice knew, had a way of becoming verdicts. The accident happened on a morning bright with false promise. Jameson, riding too fast to outrun his demons, took offense his mount wasn't ready for. Beatrice heard the commotion from the schoolroom and ran, her heart in her throat, arriving at the stables to find Edmund already there, white-faced, holding his son with a desperation that spoke of nightmares relived. The physician confirmed no serious injury, bruised ribs, a twisted ankle, the resilience of youth. But after he left, after Jameson was settled and sleeping, Beatrice found Edmund in the library, standing at the window with a glass of whiskey clutched in white-knuckled hands. He could have died. His voice was barely audible, just like Catherine. One moment of misjudgment, and I could have lost him. But you didn't. Beatrice closed the door softly behind her. He's safe, Edmund. He's fine. He turned on her then, and the anguish in his face stole her breath. For how long? How long before something takes them from me? Before I fail them the way I failed their mother? You didn't fail, Catherine. I was supposed to ride with her that day, but I had estate business meetings that couldn't wait. So she went alone, and the horse spooked, and by the time they found her, his voice cracked. I've replayed that morning 1,000 times. Different choices. Better choices. Ones where she lives, and I'm not this hollow thing pretending to be a father. Beatrice crossed to him without thinking, taking the glass from his shaking hands and setting it aside. Edmund, look at me. When he didn't, she cupped his face, forcing his gaze to hers. You are not hollow. You're grieving and exhausted and trying so hard it's breaking you. But you are here. You showed up when Jameson fell. You held him. That's what fathers do. I don't know how to do this without her. Catherine was the warmth, the light. I was always the distant one, focused on duty and estates. She made them feel loved. I just make them feel seen, valued, protected. Beatrice's thumbs brushed away tears he didn't seem to realize were falling. Do you know what Jameson told me yesterday? That he wants to be like you when he grows up. Strong and honorable, and someone people depend on. You've given your sons a model of integrity, Edmund. That's not nothing. He made a sound halfway between laugh and sob. You see things in me I don't recognize. Then perhaps it's time you started looking through different eyes. They stood there, closer than propriety allowed, the air between them charged with something neither dared name. Edmund's hand came up to cover hers where it rested against his jaw, and Beatrice felt the tremor in his fingers, the warmth of his skin, the dangerous rightness of touching him. Beatrice. Her name on his lips was a question, a warning, a plea. What are you doing to me? Reminding you that you're still alive. That feeling things, even painful things, means you haven't given up. His other hand rose to her waist, tentative, asking permission. And what if what I'm feeling is entirely inappropriate? What if every time you walk into a room I forget how to breathe? What if I've started counting the hours until dinner because it means sitting across from you, watching you laugh with my sons, seeing you belong in spaces my wife used to occupy? Beatrice's heart hammered against her ribs. Then we would both be in terrible danger, Your Grace. Edmund, he corrected roughly. When we're alone, please. Just Edmund. Edmund. The name tasted like foolishness and hope. This can't happen. I know. But neither of them moved away. You work for me. The impropriety alone would ruin you. And yet you're still holding me. His laugh was broken. Because letting go feels impossible. He released her then, stepping back with visible effort. Forgive me. You came here to help my children, not to manage their father's inappropriate feelings. Beatrice steadied herself against the desk, her own hands shaking. Edmund, she stopped, weighing honesty against self-preservation. You should know that the danger isn't one-sided. That I find myself inventing reasons to walk past your study. That when you smile at something Bram says, I feel it like sunlight after winter. That I'm terrified because I've never felt this way before and I don't know how to unfeel it. The confession hung between them, dangerous and true. Edmund stared at her as if seeing her for the first time, and in his eyes Beatrice saw her own longing reflected back, magnified, impossible to ignore. What do we do? He whispered. Nothing. We do nothing. We maintain propriety and distance and pretend this conversation never happened. Can you do that? Beatrice thought of Lady Victoria's poisoned words, of her precarious position, of the children who needed stability more than their governess needed a doomed romance. I have to. But as she left the library, closing the door on Edmund's devastated expression, Beatrice knew the truth. They had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The connection between them had deepened into something that would either save them both or destroy everything they were trying to build. And she had no idea which it would be. If you have gotten this far with us, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification button, and please drop your comments and tell us what you think about the story. The autumn assembly at Hartwick Hall was meant to be an olive branch. Edmund's return to society after 2 years of mourning, his son's formal reintroduction to Northumberland's elite. Beatrice had dressed the boys with meticulous care, Jameson in a coat that made him look heartbreakingly grown, Bram with his copper curls finally tamed. They were nervous but brave, and she had whispered encouragement as the carriage rolled toward the blazing windows of the great house. She should have recognized the trap. The ballroom glittered with malice disguised as crystal chandeliers. Beatrice remained at the periphery as required, watching Edmund guide his sons through the gauntlet of curious eyes and false sympathy. For an hour, it seemed they might survive unscathed. Then Lady Victoria's voice cut through the chamber like a blade through silk. How charming to see the Blackridge boys so well behaved. One hardly recognizes them from the wild creatures we'd heard about. Tell me, young Master Jameson, how many governesses did you drive away before they found one desperate enough to stay? The room's attention swiveled like a predator scenting blood. Jameson's face drained white, his carefully maintained composure cracking. Isolde Fenwick joined the assault with poisoned sweetness. Oh, Victoria, you mustn't embarrass them. It's not the poor dear's fault they lack proper maternal guidance. Though one does wonder if hiring a governess barely older than a girl herself was the wisest choice. She seems rather attached to his grace, doesn't she? Quite inappropriate, really. Josephine Wentworth delivered the killing blow, her voice carrying to every corner. Perhaps that's the appeal. A young woman with no prospects, suddenly dining at a duke's table, accompanying him on estate business. How very convenient for her. One might almost think she's angling for a position more permanent than governess. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Beatrice felt every eye turned toward her, assessing, judging, finding her guilty of ambitions she'd tried desperately to suppress. But worse, infinitely worse, was watching Bram's face crumple, seeing Jameson's hands clench into fists, witnessing their fragile confidence shatter under the weight of aristocratic cruelty. She didn't think. She simply moved. Crossing the ballroom floor felt like walking through fire, every step a violation of invisible boundaries. She stopped directly before Lady Victoria, her voice clear and unwavering despite her hammering heart. You're right, Lady Victoria. I am attached to His Grace's family. Because I've spent every day for 3 months watching 2 remarkable children try to survive their grief, while society vultures like you circle overhead, waiting for them to fail so you can feel superior in your comfortable cruelty. The gasps were audible. A governess did not speak to nobility this way, did not defend herself in public, did not exist beyond silent servitude. Beatrice didn't care. These boys are intelligent, compassionate, and braver than anyone in this room. Yes, they struggled. Yes, they acted out. Because they're children who lost their mother and feared losing their father too. But you, Lady Victoria, you who claim concern while wielding gossip like a weapon, you have shown them exactly what aristocratic breeding produces. Polished manners hiding rotten hearts. The silence that followed was absolute. Beatrice became aware of Edmund frozen mid-step, of the boys staring at her with something like awe, of 200 guests witnessing her social execution. Lady Victoria's face twisted with fury. Your Grace, are you going to allow your servant to speak to me this way? All eyes turned to Edmund, and Beatrice understood, with crushing clarity, that she had forced his hand. He could dismiss her now, publicly, to save his standing. Or he could defend her and confirm every ugly rumor Victoria had planted. Edmund Blackridge had spent 2 years perfecting the art of emotional control, of maintaining the careful distance between feeling and showing. In that crystalline moment, watching Beatrice stand alone against the assembled judgment of his peers, every wall he'd built collapsed into dust. Miss Hartley is quite right. His voice carried the full weight of his title, cold and absolute. My sons are not wild. They're not broken. They're grieving, and I have failed them by not protecting them from exactly this kind of cruelty. He crossed to Beatrice, positioning himself beside her in unmistakable solidarity. You came into my home, Lady Victoria, accepted my hospitality, and used it as an opportunity to humiliate my children before the entire county. You speak of propriety while demonstrating none, of breeding while exhibiting cruelty, of concern while inflicting pain. Victoria's face mottled red and white. Your Grace, you merely revealed your character, as did Miss Hartley. The difference is that she demonstrated courage, compassion, and integrity, while you demonstrated spite. Edmund's gaze swept the ballroom, landing on each face that had participated in the spectacle. My household is not your entertainment. My children are not your gossip. And Miss Hartley is under my protection. Anyone who disrespects her disrespects me. The shift in the room was palpable. Some faces registered shock, others calculation. A few, like Lord Ashmont, showed grudging respect. But the damage was done, the lines drawn. Edmund had publicly aligned himself with his governess against the aristocracy, and there would be consequences. Jameson moved first, breaking free from his paralysis to grab Beatrice's hand. Bram followed, wrapping his arms around her waist with the desperate grip of a child who'd found safe harbor in a storm. They clung to her, these wounded boys, and Beatrice held them with a fierceness that left no doubt where her loyalties lay. We're leaving. Edmund's pronouncement brooked no argument. He offered his arm to Beatrice, a gesture of equality that sent fresh ripples of shock through the assembly. Come, my dear. Let's take our family home. The word family detonated like a bomb. Beatrice felt it in the collective intake of breath, saw it in the way society's careful hierarchy trembled. By including her in that designation, Edmund had crossed a line from which there was no retreat. Lord Ashmont blocked their exit, but his expression held something unexpected, approval. Blackridge, that took stones. The county won't forget this. Good. Edmund's jaw was set. Let them remember that the Duke of Brier protects his own. The carriage ride home was silent, electric with unspoken words. The boys dozed against Beatrice, exhausted by emotion, while Edmund watched her across the dim interior with an intensity that made her skin burn. You shouldn't have done that, Beatrice finally whispered. You've jeopardized everything. You defended my children when I stood there like a coward. I merely corrected my mistake. Edmund, the scandal. Let there be scandal. His voice was rough with something that sounded like liberation. I've spent 2 years caring what they think, and it's gained me nothing but isolation. You were right, Beatrice. All of it. And tonight, watching you stand alone against them, I realized something. What? His eyes met hers in the darkness, and Beatrice saw her future written there. Dangerous, impossible, inevitable. That I would rather face scandal with you than propriety without you. The words hung between them like a vow. Society had already condemned them. The whispers would become roars. But in that moment, with sleeping children proof of what they'd built together, Beatrice felt the first dangerous bloom of hope. Perhaps some things were worth burning for. The letters arrived like a siege. Lord Pemberton, Edmund's distant cousin and heir presumptive, wrote with thinly veiled threats about family reputation and the Duke's responsibility to the title. Lady Victoria's father, the Earl of Westmarch, sent a formal complaint about the ungovernable governess who insults her betters. Even the Bishop of Northumberland, ostensibly concerned for the children's spiritual welfare, suggested that Miss Hensley's continued employment created an atmosphere of moral ambiguity unsuitable for young minds. Edmund read each missive in his study, his jaw tightening with every sanctimonious word. They wanted her gone. Dismissed, discredited, erased from Brier Keep as if she'd never existed. Some letters came with barely concealed bribes, offers of advantageous matches for the boys, political alliances, financial opportunities, all contingent on Edmund demonstrating proper judgment by removing the inappropriate governess. But it was Lord Ashmont's visit that cut deepest. The old Earl had been Edmund's father's closest friend, a man whose opinion carried weight beyond title or wealth. He arrived without ceremony, settled into the library's wing chair with the familiarity of decades, and spoke with brutal honesty. You're in love with her. Not a question. The whole county can see it. And she with you, unless I miss my guess. Edmund said nothing, which was answer enough. Then marry her, boy. or let her go. But this limbo you're creating destroys you both. Ashmont's weathered face softened. I watched you die when Catherine passed. Watched you become a ghost in your own home. This Hensley woman brought you back to life. That's worth more than 100 proper matches with women who'd bore you to tears and neglect your sons. The scandal will pass. Scandal always does. But Edmund, you must choose. Keeping her as governess while loving her as a woman is cruelty to her and cowardice in you. After Ashmont departed, Edmund found Beatrice in the garden with the boys, her laughter carrying on the autumn wind. Watching her, he understood the impossible position he'd created. She couldn't stay as governess, not with every servant witnessing their charged silences, their careful avoidance of touch. But asking her to leave felt like self-amputation. That evening, he found her in the schoolroom, alone, packing books with methodical precision. What are you doing? She didn't turn. Lord Ashmont is right. I should go. I've caused you enough trouble. Beatrice. Lady Thornhill has offered me a position in Edinburgh. Respectable salary, good family. I leave next week. The words landed like blows. You're running. Finally, she faced him, and the devastation in her eyes matched his own. I'm choosing what's best for your sons. If I stay, the whispers will follow them forever. The governess their father couldn't dismiss because he was infatuated with her. Every door will close, Edmund. Every opportunity poisoned. And if I asked you to stay? Not as governess, but as... Don't. Her voice cracked. Please don't make this harder. We both know what we feel. But love doesn't conquer everything, despite what the poets claim. Sometimes love means walking away before you destroy what you love most. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. That night, Jameson's fever spiked dangerously, and the physician's grave expression spoke of pneumonia's deadly grip. For 3 days, Beatrice never left his bedside, sponging his burning skin, forcing liquids past cracked lips, singing the songs his mother once sang. Edmund watched her fight for his son's life with the ferocity of a mother lion, and understood with crystalline clarity that this woman wasn't leaving. Not while his children needed her. Not while he needed her. On the 4th day, when Jameson's fever finally broke, he opened his eyes and whispered, "Don't leave us, Bea. Please don't leave." Beatrice's tears fell on his small hand. "I won't, sweetheart. I promise." Edmund stood in the doorway, listening to his son extract the vow he himself couldn't ask for. And he knew, scandal be damned, he would find a way to keep them both. Winter came to Brier Keep with unexpected gentleness, snow softening the Gothic edges into something almost tender. Jameson recovered slowly, kept warm by fires and Beatrice's vigilant care. And in those quiet weeks of convalescence, something shifted in the household's foundation, like ice cracking to reveal the river beneath. Edmund found her in the music room on Christmas Eve, standing before Catherine's portrait with an expression of such longing it stopped his breath. "I'm not trying to replace her," Beatrice said without turning. "I want you to know that. She was their mother, your wife. She'll always be part of this family's story." Edmund crossed to stand beside her. "I know. But Beatrice, a story can have more than one chapter. Catherine was my past, and I loved her. But you," his voice roughened, "you're my present. My future, if you'll have me." She turned then, eyes wide. "Edmund, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that Lord Ashmont was right. This limbo is destroying us both. I'm saying that I love you, not despite the scandal, but because you're worth any scandal society can devise. I'm saying..." He dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "Beatrice Hensley, would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Of being a mother to my sons? Of building a life with me that's messy and imperfect and real?" Beatrice stared at the ring, at this impossible man offering her an impossible future. "They'll crucify us. Your family, your peers. Let them try. I've spent 2 years living in fear of judgment, and it gained me nothing but loneliness. You taught me that love requires courage. So here I am, being courageous. Say yes, Beatrice. Please say yes." "Yes." The word came out choked with tears. "Yes, you foolish, wonderful man. Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her with 2 years of suppressed longing. And when they finally pulled apart, both breathless, they found Jameson and Bram standing in the doorway, grinning like conspirators. Finally, Jameson pronounced with 10-year-old authority, "We've been waiting forever. Brier launched himself at Beatrice, wrapping around her legs. "Does this mean you're staying? Really staying? As our mother?" Beatrice knelt to embrace them both, Edmund's arms encircling all three. "Really staying? Forever?" The wedding took place in spring, small and private, with only true allies present. Lord Ashmont gave Beatrice away, his gruff voice breaking as he whispered, "You saved this family, girl. Don't you forget it." The boys served as attendants, their joy uncontained and infectious. And when Edmund kissed his bride before God and witness, sealing a union society had deemed impossible, Beatrice felt the final piece of her broken heart slot into place. They honeymooned at Briar Keep, having no desire to leave the home they'd built together. On their first morning as man and wife, Beatrice woke to find Edmund watching her with an expression of such wonder it made her breath catch. "What is it?" "I'm remembering the day you arrived. This terrified woman with steady eyes, hired to tame my wild children. I never imagined," his voice cracked. "You tamed me instead. My grief, my fear, my certainty that I'd never feel whole again. You didn't fix me with magic, Beatrice. You loved me with such patient fierceness that I had no choice but to heal." Beatrice traced the line of his jaw, marveling at the permission to touch freely. "We healed each other, Edmund. That's what love does. It doesn't make everything perfect. It just makes the imperfect bearable." Years later, when their own daughter played in the gardens with her older brothers, when Brier Keep rang with laughter instead of silence, when society had grudgingly accepted that the Duke and his governess turned Duchess were here to stay, Beatrice would look back on that cold November morning when she'd arrived with nothing but a worn bag and desperate hope. She'd been hired to calm a wild air. Instead, she'd found a family drowning in grief and pulled them toward light, one careful step at a time. She'd faced scandal and cruelty and impossible odds. And she'd won, not through magic or fate, but through the stubborn belief that love, real love, was always worth fighting for. The Duke of Brier had never expected to heal. His sons had never expected to feel safe again. And Beatrice had never expected to find a home where she didn't just belong, but was cherished. But sometimes, the best stories are the ones we never see coming. The ones that begin with impossible odds and end with hard-won joy. The ones that remind us that broken things can be mended, that grief doesn't last forever, and that sometimes, just sometimes, courage and love are enough. And they lived, if not without challenges, then with the strength to face them together. Which, Beatrice had learned, was the truest definition of happily ever after. If this story touched your heart, if you found yourself holding your breath during Beatrice's stand at the assembly, if you felt Edmund's grief and hope and transformation, then I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that like button. Not just because it helps the algorithm, but because it tells me that stories like this matter to you. That you want more tales of courage, of love that defies odds, of families built not by blood alone, but by choice. And here's the thing. I pour my heart into every story I create. Hours of research, of crafting each emotional beat, of finding just the right words to make you feel what these characters feel. But I can't do this without you. Your likes tell YouTube to share these stories with others who need them. Your subscriptions mean I can keep creating. Your comments, telling me which moment made you cry or cheer or believe in second chances, those fuel every word I write. So please, if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story. And drop a comment below telling me, what was your favorite moment in Beatrice and Edmund's journey? Was it when she defended the children? When he knelt in that music room? When the family finally became whole? Because tomorrow, I'm bringing you a completely new story. A tale of secrets, redemption, and a woman who inherits a crumbling estate along with a mystery that could destroy everything she's built. It's atmospheric, it's emotional, and I promise it will keep you riveted from the first word to the last. But I can only keep creating these stories if you're with me. So like, subscribe, comment, and share this video with someone who loves historical romance and believes in love that's worth fighting for. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to Beatrice's story. Thank you for believing, as I do, that courage and love can heal even the deepest wounds. I'll see you in the next story. Until then, keep believing in second chances. And remember, sometimes the best families are the ones we choose.